The church bell had struck 6 when Martha Kellum first felt the sand beneath her knees give way to something warmer. Blood, she realized. Her own blood soaking through her skirts into the cold earth behind the assay office. Her baby, lay silent in the flour sack, wrapped tight against the March wind that cut down from the Rockies like a blade. $7. That's what remained of her husband's final wages from the Independence mine. Stage fare to Denver cost $6.50, leaving her 2 bits for what? Milk she couldn't make? A room she couldn't afford? Martha pressed the coins against her palm until their edges bit into her skin. The silver town of Leadville stretched before her in the grey dawn light, its wooden buildings climbing the mountainside like broken teeth. Smoke rose from a dozen chimneys, carrying the scent of coffee and bacon from homes where families woke together, where mothers had husbands who came home at night who didn't die under 1,000 tons of ore. She adjusted the bundle in her arms. The baby hadn't cried since birth, not once. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe that was God's way of making the choice easier. The assay office door remained locked, its painted sign promising to buy silver at 42 cents per ounce. If she had silver, if she had anything left to sell besides the wedding ring that had slipped loose on her finger, too loose now to stay put. Martha stood, her legs shaking from exhaustion and loss. The stage office sat 3 blocks down Harrison Avenue, its yellow lamplight promising escape from this place that had taken everything. First her husband, now her hope. The baby shifted in her arms, a small warmth against the cold morning. She took 1 step toward Harrison Avenue, then another. Behind her, the sand held the impression of where she'd knelt, a small dark stain, the only evidence of what had happened here. The clock in the church tower showed 6:20, 40 minutes to decide. The stage office smelled of tobacco and wet wool. 3 passengers already waited on the wooden benches, a drummer in a checked suit, a widow in black crepe, and a young man whose soft hands marked him as someone's son sent west to find fortune or character, whichever came first. Denver stage, 7 sharp, the clock announced, not looking up from his ledger. 6.50 each way, no baggage over 40 pounds. Martha approached the counter, the flour sack bundle pressed tight against her chest. 1 ticket to Denver. 6.50. The clerk's eyes flicked to her makeshift carrier. What's in the sack? Provisions. The lie tasted like copper in her mouth. She counted out $6.49, leaving her precious last penny. The clerk studied the coins, tested one between his teeth, then tore a ticket from his book. Stage leaves on time. Driver don't wait for nobody. Outside, the church bell struck 6:30. Martha found a seat near the window and arranged the bundle on her lap. Through the glass, she watched Leadville wake, miners heading to the day shift, shopkeepers sweeping their stoops, children running to school with books strapped to their backs. The baby moved again, just a flutter against the flour sack fabric. Martha looked down and found dark eyes staring back at her alert, aware, impossibly knowing for something so new to the world. "She's beautiful," Martha startled. The widow in black had moved to sit beside her, her weathered face kind despite the morning's harsh light. "Your daughter?" the woman asked. The word hung between them like smoke. Daughter. Martha had never spoken it aloud, never let herself think it. The baby was a problem, a burden, a choice to be made, before 7 o'clock. But looking into those dark eyes, she felt something crack open inside her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "My daughter," the widow smiled. "I'm Mrs. Chen. Lost my husband in the mines last winter." She gestured toward the window, where the Independence mine's headframe rose black against the sky. "These mountains take our men. Leave us to figure out the rest." The stage door opened with a bang, letting in cold air and the scent of horses. The driver stepped inside, his face red from wind and whiskey. "Denver stage! All aboard! Who's coming aboard?" Martha stood, her legs unsteady. The baby, her daughter, made a small sound, the first she'd heard from those tiny lungs. Not quite a cry, more like a question. Mrs. Chen touched her arm. "Child's asking if you mean to keep her." The words hit like a physical blow. Martha looked down at the bundle in her arms, at the dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to her heart. The driver cleared his throat. "Clock's ticking, ladies. Road don't wait for nobody." Martha, borrowing Mrs. Chen's steadiness, stopped at the threshold. The baby's small hand had worked free from the flour sack, 5 perfect fingers curled against the morning air. She thought of her husband James, crushed 3 days past in Tunnel 7, how he'd placed his palm against her swollen belly and whispered, "We'll call her Hope." How he'd saved every penny of his mining wages, hiding them in a tobacco tin under their bed. "For the baby's future," he'd said. "For our future." The future. Martha looked at the stage, at the open door that led to Denver and anonymity, and the chance to start fresh without the weight of another life in her arms. Then she looked down at her daughter, for that's what she was, wasn't she? This small breathing piece of herself and James. The choice wasn't about money or stages or even survival. It was about whether love was stronger than fear. Martha stepped back from the stage door. "I'm not going," she said. The driver shrugged. "Your ticket's paid. No refunds." "I understand." Martha moved to the counter where the clerk still bent over his ledger. "Sir, I'd like to send a wire. Telegraph office is 2 blocks up Harrison, but it don't open till 8. "Then I'll wait." Mrs. Chen gathered her black skirts and stood. "Child, what are you planning?" Martha looked down at her daughter, who had gone quiet again, those dark eyes fixed on her face with what seemed like patience. "I'm going to ask for help," she said, "from people who understand what family means." Through the window she could see the edge of town where the Cheyenne sometimes came to trade, where a painted horse might stand patient in the snow, waiting for its rider to finish whatever business brought him to the white man's silver camp, where someone had been watching. The telegraph office key tapped out its message in sharp bursts. "To Charles Kellum, Denver. James died in mine. Have baby girl. Need help. Martha. 25 cents to send 10 words across the mountains to her husband's brother." 25 cents she didn't have until Mrs. Chen pressed a silver quarter into her palm. "Family helps family," the Chinese woman said simply. Martha cradled her daughter. She'd started thinking the word naturally now against her shoulder as they walked back toward the center of town. The baby had taken a little milk from a rag soaked in warm water, enough to stop the hollow feeling in Martha's chest. But milk cost money. A room cost money. Everything cost money she didn't have. "There's a boarding house on 5th Street, Mrs." Chen said, reading her thoughts. "Mrs. Macready takes in women with nowhere else. She's got a kind heart, even if she hides it behind a sour face." They passed the Independence Mine's entrance, where the day shift was already deep underground, following veins of silver through the heart of the mountain. The mine that had taken James, that had taken Mrs. Chen's husband, that took someone's man most every month. "The Cheyenne," Martha said suddenly. "At the stage office this morning, you said someone was watching." Mrs. Chen nodded toward the edge of town. "Been there since dawn. Painted pony, warrior in winter clothes. Just watching." "Watching what?" "You, I think. You and the baby." A chill ran down Martha's spine that had nothing to do with the mountain wind. Why would— The church bell interrupted her, striking 9 times. As the sound faded, she heard something else. Hoofbeats on the frozen ground, slow and deliberate. The Cheyenne warrior rounded the corner on his painted horse, moving at a careful walk down Harrison Avenue. Shopkeepers stopped their sweeping to watch. Children pressed their faces to windows. Even the town dogs fell silent. He drew rein 20 feet from where Martha and Mrs. Chen stood. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30 winters, with intelligent eyes and silver ornaments worked into his black hair. His horse, a pinto mare with painted symbols on her flanks, snorted steam in the cold air. "You are the woman who gave birth behind the assay office," he said in careful English. It wasn't a question. Martha's arms tightened around her daughter. "How do you—" I watched. He dismounted, his moccasins silent on the wooden boardwalk. "You left blood on the sand, blood of a child born in the shadow of the mountain." Mrs. Chen stepped closer to Martha. "What do you want?" The warrior's eyes never left the bundle in Martha's arms. "My sister died in childbirth 2 weeks ago. left a husband and no baby to feed. In our way, when a child is born at the same time another dies, it means the spirits have made a trade." "I don't understand," Martha whispered. "The baby your daughter should have been she came to us. The baby our daughter should have been she came to you." He reached into a leather pouch at his belt and withdrew something wrapped in soft deerskin. "My brother-in-law, Standing Elk, asked me to bring this." Martha didn't move to take the offering. "What is it?" "Medicine bundle. For protection. For a child who belongs to 2 families now." The warrior's voice gentled. "We do not steal babies from their mothers, but we recognize when the spirits make connections across the divide." The baby stirred in Martha's arms and made that small questioning sound again. The warrior heard it and smiled the first change of expression she'd seen on his face. "She asks if you will let her have 2 peoples to call upon when she needs strength." Martha looked at the medicine bundle in his outstretched hand, at the silver work in his hair, at the patience in his dark eyes. "What's your name?" "Grey Wolf Running. My brother-in-law is Standing Elk. We camp 3 miles up the valley when the silver men allow it. And if I take this, you take nothing. You acknowledge something that already island." He pressed the bundle into her free hand. "When she is old enough to ask questions about who she is, you will have answers." The bundle was warm against her palm, as if it held some of the same life force that moved in her daughter's small body. Martha looked down at the baby, who had gone quiet again, dark eyes reflecting the morning sky. "Her father was named James," she said. "James Kellum. James Kellum's daughter is welcome in Standing Elk's lodge when winter comes hard and the silver town turns cold." Grey Wolf Running touched the baby's wrapped foot with one gentle finger. "Among us, she will never be alone." The church bell struck noon as Martha walked through Leadville Center with her daughter in her arms and the medicine bundle tucked safely in her coat pocket. The telegram response had come at 11:30. "Coming on. Evening train. Bring baby. Charles." Help was coming. But more than that, sitting in Mrs. McReady's boarding-house parlor with Mrs. Chen beside her, and the promise of Standing Elk's protection warming her chest, Martha finally understood what Grey Wolf Running had meant about connections across divides. Her daughter would never be alone. The boarding-house door opened, bringing cold air and the sound of boots on the wooden porch. Mrs. McReady appeared in the doorway, her face creased with the particular worry that came from watching other people's troubles. "Martha Kellum? There's men here to see you. Say it's about your husband." Martha's blood chilled. She looked through the lace curtains and saw 2 figures on the porch, one in a mine supervisor's coat, the other in the blue uniform of a territorial marshal. "Mrs. Kellum?" The supervisor stepped inside, hat in hand. "I'm Ford from the Independence Mine. This is Marshal Webb." The marshal touched his hat brim. "Ma'am, we need to talk about your husband's accident." "James is dead," Martha said quietly. "What more is there to discuss?" Ford and Webb exchanged glances. Ford cleared his throat. "Ma'am, there's some question about irregularities in the mine records. Your husband's final shift, the tunnel he was working, the timing of the collapse." "What kind of irregularities?" Mrs. Chen asked sharply. Marshal Webb stepped forward. "Mrs. Kellum, we have reason to believe your husband may have discovered something in Tunnel 7. Something worth killing for." The words hit Martha like a physical blow. She clutched her daughter closer, the baby's warmth, the only steady thing in a world that had suddenly tilted sideways. "You're saying James was murdered?" "We're saying the evidence suggests it," Webb replied. "And if that's true, you and your baby might be in danger." Through the window, Martha could see Grey Wolf Running sitting motionless on his painted horse at the edge of the boarding-house yard, watching, waiting. "What evidence?" she asked. Ford pulled a folded paper from his coat. "This was in your husband's coat pocket when we found him, hidden in the lining." Martha unfolded the paper with shaking hands. It was a hand-drawn map of the mine tunnels, with one section marked in James's careful script. "Silver vein, pure ore tunnel, 7 extension, tell no one until we can file claim." "He found a new vein," she whispered. "A rich one," Ford confirmed. "Rich enough that someone wanted him dead before he could report it officially." The baby made her small, questioning sound. Martha looked down into those dark, knowing eyes and felt something steal inside her chest. Who knew he'd found it? "That's what we're trying to determine," Webb said. "But Mrs. Kellum, you need to understand if word gets out about this map, about what your husband discovered. Every claim jumper and desperado between here and Denver is going to come looking for you." "Looking for what?" "For the location. For anything else he might have told you. For leverage to use against you." Webb's face was grim. "You can't stay in Leadville. It's not safe." Martha stood, her daughter secure in her arms. Through the window, she could see that Grey Wolf Running had been joined by 2 other riders. Standing Elk, she guessed, and another Cheyenne man she didn't recognize. "Marshal Webb," she said quietly, "what if I didn't want to leave? What if I wanted to file my husband's claim and work it myself?" Webb and Ford both started talking at once, their voices overlapping in a chorus of impossibility. Woman alone, dangerous work, claim jumpers, no legal standing, think of the baby. Martha let them talk until they ran out of words, then walked to the window. Grey Wolf Running met her eyes through the glass, and nodded once. Behind him, Standing Elk raised his hand in what might have been a greeting or a promise. "Gentlemen," she said, not turning around, "I appreciate your concern, but I think my daughter and I have more protection than you realize." She opened the window and called out in a voice that carried across the yard, "Grey Wolf Running, would you ask Standing Elk if his offer extends to a silver mine claim?" The warrior's smile was answer enough. 3 months later, Martha Kellum stood at the entrance to the Little Star mine named for the daughter, who slept peacefully in a Cheyenne cradleboard nearby, watching the morning shift emerge from tunnels that now produced silver at a rate that made even stoic-men go quiet. The operation ran like clockwork. Cheyenne workers who moved through the deep passages with the silent grace of people who understood stone and darkness. Chinese miners whose generations of experience with hard rock and dangerous conditions had proven invaluable, and Martha herself learning to read silver veins like scripture, finding in them the story of what the mountain was willing to give and what it demanded in return. The claim had proven even richer than James suspected, rich enough to build the frame house that now stood where her tent had been, its windows facing both the town of Leadville below and the Cheyenne camp up the valley, connecting 2 worlds with the simple act of architecture. Rich enough to send monthly payments to Charles in Denver, along with letters explaining why she would never need his charity, only his continued friendship. Rich enough to employ Mrs. Chen as bookkeeper, and pay Miss McGready handsomely for the meals that appeared 3 times a day, carried up the mountain by boarding-house residents who had become something like extended family. But the real wealth lay in watching Little Star reach eagerly for Grey Wolf Running's silver hair ornaments when he came to report on the day's progress, or seeing Standing Elk teach her the hand signs that meant hungry and sleepy and happy to see you in the Cheyenne way. The baby was growing strong and alert, her dark eyes taking in everything with the kind of focused attention that suggested she would be formidable when she grew into whatever she was meant to become. Martha opened the letter that had arrived on the morning stage, another missive from Charles, still offering sanctuary in Denver, still unable to quite believe that his sister-in-law had become one of the most successful mine owners in Colorado. His latest letter was different, though, filled with newspaper clippings about the Lady Silver Queen of Leadville and expressions of amazement at how quickly her operation had grown from a single claim to a complex enterprise that employed workers from 3 different communities. "The territorial governor himself has asked about meeting you," Charles had written. "There's talk of you testifying before Congress about mining practices and labor relations. Martha, you've become famous. Famous." Martha folded the letter and tucked it into the medicine bundle, next to the map James had drawn and the first silver nugget pulled from Tunnel 7's extension. Fame was less important than the fact that Little Star would grow up in a world where her mother's name meant something besides desperation, where her mixed heritage was seen as strength rather than complication, where the connections forged in tragedy had grown into something beautiful and lasting. She lifted her daughter from the cradleboard and walked to the edge of the claim, where she could see both worlds spread out below and above. Leadville with its busy streets and smoking chimneys, The Cheyenne camp with its painted lodges and grazing horses, and the mountain itself scarred by mining but still magnificent, still holding secrets that would take lifetimes to uncover. "See that little star who bridges," she whispered against the baby's dark hair. "That's your inheritance. Not just the silver, but all of it. The town where your father worked, the people who helped your mother learn to be strong, the mountain that gave up its treasures so you could grow up free." The baby made her questioning sound, and from the direction of the Cheyenne camp came the answer: Standing Elk, singing one of the morning songs that meant safe journey and good fortune, his voice carrying across the valley with the assurance of someone who had found reason to believe in happiness again. Martha smiled and headed back toward the house, where account books waited and supply orders needed reviewing, and a dozen small decisions would shape the day's work. Behind her, the sand that had once held the impression of a desperate woman's knees now supported the foundation of an enterprise built to last through booms and busts, through the changing seasons of little stars growing up, through all the years when a daughter would need to know that she came from people who had faced impossible choices and somehow found the courage to choose love over fear, hope over desperation, connection over isolation. On the horizon, storm clouds were building the kind of weather that would bring snow by evening and make the mountain roads impassable for days. But Martha felt no concern as she watched the dark sky gather. The house was well stocked with food and firewood. The mine was secured against cave-ins and flooding. And most important of all, Little Star would weather whatever came next, surrounded by people who had claimed her as their own across every boundary that mattered. Standing Elk's song drifted down from the mountain, joined now by other voices, Grey Wolf Running's deep bass, Mrs. Chen's clear alto, even some of the Chinese miners who had learned enough Cheyenne to join the morning blessing. The sound rose and fell with the wind, carrying promises that went deeper than language, older than the divisions between peoples, stronger than whatever storms might come. In her arms, Little Star Who Bridges opened her eyes and looked up at the darkening sky without fear, as if she understood instinctively that clouds brought not just challenges, but also the snow that would fill the streams come spring, the moisture that would make the mountain meadows green with new growth, the weather that would remind everyone who lived here that survival depended not on individual strength, but on the willingness to take care of each other when the world turned cold and dark. Martha carried her daughter inside, where lamplight waited and supper simmered on the stove, and tomorrow's possibilities lay spread across her desk like maps of territories not yet explored but already claimed by hope. If something in this story touched you, linger with us. We'll handle the rest.